That's okay. Here we go. We have some other people joining us. I see some good friends in the industry joining us. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Appreciate your time and attention. For anybody who couldn't make it, the recording should help them if they want to watch it later. My name is George Ayers. I'm the Managing Director of AutoMobility Advisors. We're a 4.5-year-old boutique consulting company specializing in connected vehicles and mobility and all things automotive technology. Really happy to be here with you, and thanks again for joining. I would like to also point out that this webinar is based on a white paper that we produced with our friends at Devox, which we put on our website last week, I believe. So if you go to automobilityadvisors.com, you can find that white paper called AI and IoT for connected vehicles. So this is an extended discussion about what's in the white paper. So if you want to follow along, you could download the white paper as well. And we'll get started. Why don't I first turn it over to Dan Teeter to introduce himself in his role at AutoMobility Advisors.
Thank you, George. I'm Dan Teeter. I'm the advisory director here at AMA. My work history started at Ford, and then I was at Nissan leading connected vehicles there, and then left a few years ago and have been working with a variety of companies such as Devox since then. Nice to see you today.
Thank you, Dan. And Chip?
Hey everybody, Chip Getzinger. Nice to see a lot of familiar names in the audience today. I'm the solutions director here at AMA. I started my career in Silicon Valley, but for the last almost over 15 years now, I've been in the connected vehicle space, first with Nissan and then with Sirius XM connected vehicles. And I've been with AMA now for 3 years, working with companies like Devox and many of you folks on the call.
Great. Thank you, Chip. And I'll turn it over to Konstantin to tell us a little bit about himself in Devox, and then Vadim as well. Go ahead, Konstantin.
Yeah, hi everybody. Nice to see you and you guys as well as old folks. I'm Konstantin. I'm CEO of Devox Software. We have been starting as a outsourcing company, but for the last few years we mostly focus on legacy optimization and innovation implementation, especially in the auto industry. Vadim, go ahead next.
Yep. Thanks a lot, guys. Nice to see all of you. And yeah, my name is Vadim. I'm the commercial director here, but I have pretty huge technical background. For the last 20 years, I've been working with the huge set of companies, mainly building various software and solving different complex questions. And at the same time, as a Devox, being the co-founder together with Konstantin, during the course of working with various types of the clients, we defined that automobility space, manufacturing, OEMs is a sweet spot, and we have huge things to make and to solve within that niche. Things it's pretty complex and at the same time interesting. Thanks a lot.
Yes, it is interesting. Thank you, Vadim. Thank you, Konstantin. And that's what we're here to talk about is vehicle software and developing new things for automotive. But let's kind of set the scene a little bit first. So we have in our white paper topics AI and IoT for connected vehicles. If I take those in reverse order, this year is 30 years ago that OnStar launched in the United States. So connected vehicles, as we kind of know them and understand them, are now 30 years old. So it's not a new idea. There's over 400 connected vehicles in the world today. And most vehicles that you buy today are connected. I know there's some outliers, like the new Slate vehicle, for example, on purpose is trying not to be connected, but most vehicles are. And so that's kind of a situation that we see out in the world that we have to think about. But then we add on to that this idea of IoT, which some people forget stands for Internet of Things. That's been around for also a couple of decades. And if I think about IoT within the connected vehicle space, of course, there was a whole period where a lot of people were talking about the car is the phone, right? They were thinking about it in terms of smartphone, and the car has software and it's a platform just like the phone. But think about how OnStar went to market with an embedded system, and then how early Ford Sync went to market with a smartphone-based remote system. So the services were driven by the smartphone, and that kind of tension has pretty much resolved itself. Even Ford now has embedded systems. Everybody uses embedded systems. So now that Internet of Things is really directly applied to the car. And now we start to talk about things like software-defined vehicle, all kinds of other areas that are enabled because we have that connected vehicle that's now with embedded systems. And now we recently, the last few years, start adding on this topic of AI or artificial intelligence. People again use the acronym and forget what it stands for. So artificial intelligence, and we talk about applications that we can deploy artificial intelligence on. So just a comment about connected vehicles have been around a long time. They're certainly evolving and changing, but automotive has a lot of needs to drive services and features within connected vehicles that are IoT based, AI based, et cetera. Constantine, I want to start with you just on a question. You guys have been working across various industries, not just in automotive. IoT as an idea sometimes is applied to, shop floor machines, all kinds of other devices. In your experience, what are the kinds of things that you see IoT being used for, and how can other industries inform automotive about maybe some opportunities and some areas of improvement?
Well, what I have seen in different industries, well, probably first time when I heard about IoT was 15 years ago or something, and it was from telecom. And what we actually see is in logistics, in manufacturing, just IoT is not enough right now. It was great 10 years ago, but now it's just another layer of getting information. So the next phase, and probably what is actually after dealership, after makers trying to do right now, is to take the data they could get from IoT, from connected vehicles, and use AI as a tool to inspect, to interpret, to adapt the data they got, and to build new value for their customers. What it means? Well, actually, IoT is not enough, just as a statement. The next step, we took AI, we built enterprise software to create service. When I say service, it could be actually anything. It could be end service for an end customer, like support or I don't know, predictive maintenance for manufacturing, or it could be fleet maintenance or fleet management tools for operational companies. It all depends on the customer. But again, uh, the last but not the least, the only idea, AI is the thing that will create new value and new revenue streams for automakers.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else have a comment on kind of applications from other industries into auto, learnings from other industries?
Yeah, Chris Barrett, eShell Resources. We do a lot in the IoT and embedded space in automotive, and George and I actually go way back. We met
Hey,
several
Chris,
times,
good to
and
see you.
yeah, it's good to hear from you. We touch a lot of good things in IoT and embedded systems using AI, sometimes around smart city, but that's bleeding over to also into the automotive space. So what we do is actually bridge that gap. So we're seeing a lot of things with AI information for smart cities that vehicles are now using to create a better environment for the user. So going back to the saying that your car is now your cell phone, it's pretty much it. I mean, if you're driving a Tesla right now, you're basically rolling around in an iPad.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's exactly where the market's going to and what we're seeing, what we're trending. And this is a space that we live in and we do really well in. So yeah, a lot of good things are coming from AI, but we got to be careful about what tools we use. So I'm curious to hear from everyone. What are they using? Are they using Anthropic? Are they using, are they using OpenAI? What platforms are you guys using to support your AI, your agents when vehicles are connecting to IoT or embedded, or even along those lines?
great. Thanks, Chris. Chip, I'd like to just go to you real quick as well. Just, as we start to talk about the issues here, what are the mechanics of, data and cars and platforms and all the different moving pieces automakers have to think about as we start to think of cars as IoT devices, and we start to deploy AI on top of those cars.
Yeah, it can be really quite complicated, right? So that a lot of folks are talking about and will be talking about how you're generating value out of connectivity for the vehicle. And a lot of times that's centered on the data. But first off, you've got to have a connection to the vehicle, right? And a two-way connection, generally cellular. But there's a lot of discussion around one-way connections via broadcast to be able to push much larger amounts of data in a more cost-effective fashion. So you've got your various connectivity methods, whether that's cellular, satellite, ATSC 3.0, et cetera. And then you can send commands to the vehicle. But on the data side, as you're extracting data from the vehicle, you've got to collect it from all vehicle systems. You've got to transmit it. You've got a carrier of some sort in place to transmit all that. You've got to store it. You've got to ingest and organize and normalize that. You've got security involved. And then you've got the insights and abstraction layer. And that's some of what we'll talk about today is raw data is an ingredient, but it's not a cake, right? So it's not everything you need to create and generate value. You've got to be able to build insights from that. And I think that's where a lot of the AI components come in is how do you take that raw data and make something meaningful from it that's actionable, that you can generate value from either through modifying your own business processes or by working with a partner for them to be able to generate value. So there's a lot of technical and procedural and security facets in getting and managing the data and making it accessible. But there's a whole new layer, newish anyway, a developing layer of technology in place to take that data and turn it into something meaningful, something useful.
Yep. And in my experience as well, even though OnStar's been around for 30 years and connected vehicles are natural working products that everybody's used to, much of that fire hose of data coming off the car is not really being used much of the time. A lot of it is getting into cold storage, essentially. So automakers are collecting a lot, but they're not necessarily using a lot. And I'm sure that's changing, but that's been the situation for a little bit of time. Let's talk about also. I want to go to Vadim next. Vadim, I just want to think about maybe some examples of helping automakers do AI programs. Any examples come to mind from your point of view that Devox has worked on?
Uh, yeah, thanks a lot. In general, well, I don't want to limit our conversation only with, let's say, automakers, but at the same time, it's still an ecosystem. So there is a lot of players on the market. Someone would like to implement some kind of the tool or the application to be sold to automaker, to the OEM. At the same time, there is a set of uh, internal problems and internal projects that OEM should implement. And at the same time, there is a set of players on the market who implements actually operation systems, make the ecosystem, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, just an idea that it's not only for automakers. And to take a step back, actually, what kind of the software and what kind of the requests we have solved, let me give an it may be boring for someone. It's not on the business side, but it's more on the technical. But at the same time, let me give you the idea of the infrastructure. What does it actually mean? The IoT, the vehicle itself, clouds, and AI on the top of that. How does it work? So the whole infrastructure is that everything starts from the hardware that is installed in the vehicle, and it is produced by the manufacturer or by the tier one company. There should be software that is operating on the low level on the to manage that, for instance, sensor to get the data. Then there is an SDK that actually allows you, not you, but developers to get the data from it. Then there is a connectivity layer that how does it sends data to the cloud or anywhere. So it could be sent to the cloud via internet connection, or that's something that Chip mentioned actually. After that, what do we have? We have some legislation issues, but we'll speak about that later. But at the same time, not every data could be transferred, populated, whatever. Then after having this data in the cloud, we actually starting to work with that. We have the data, then we have the actually ability to predict something, to make anything with that, to make any kind of data lakes, and to solve actual things with that data. So uh, we are typically working on all layers of this, well, technical layers. What kind of the things and what kind of the projects we have done there, starting from, for instance, getting the data to the lake and make the predictions of the fuel consumption, whatever. Another idea is that, for instance, there is an approach called AGI. So it's too time and cost consuming to send all the data to the cloud. Something is calculated on the vehicle itself. So it's called AGI. And there is approaches to make that, for instance, with software that NVIDIA gives and all of that stuff. So it could be calculated on the car or on the cloud. So what I'm trying to say here that it depends really on each cases, each particular case, but at the same time on any level, it could be solved on the operational system level, on the level of hardware, on the level of being having the data in the clouds and all of that stuff. I'm just more than happy to give more specific cases during
No, no,
our
that's
Q&A
that's
sessions.
really great. Thank you. I think it just highlights all the different pieces, all the different
Yeah,
components as Chip was talking about.
absolutely.
And Chip, just back to you real quick. You had we had a conversation in the white paper about the uses of all that data, the kinds of revenue strategies and other things companies would do by having all this data. Can you give us maybe some ideas of the types of things that we see in
Sure.
connected vehicles?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. Just like the technology in connectivity has evolved over the years, there are business and revenue generation and value generation models that are more and less mature, right? So the ones that we are currently pretty familiar with, they're pretty well established, are, for example, consumer subscriptions, right? So they're subscriptions to your base connectivity and services from the OEM or from the TSP. There are some premium subscriptions to everything up to concierge. So that's a model that folks are pretty familiar with. UBI is also one that's been around a long time. And for those of you tired of the alphabet soup, usage-based insurance, you'll get plenty of other TLAs, three-letter acronyms through the course of the talk. But usage-based insurance has been around for a decade plus. And there's also in the established space, some of the fleet management capabilities and tools that are out there in the market. So those have been around a long time. The ones that you're seeing become more prevalent at this point are things like predictive maintenance. There's a lot of discussion around predictive maintenance. There are folks that have gotten it right. There are some folks that have taken a swing and a bit of a miss on their ability to actually predict maintenance in a useful way. But it's a very big topic because it's particularly relevant in the fleet and commercial space. So that continues to get a lot of attention and growth. OTA is another space that's getting a lot of attention and growth right now as we shift into another acronym, SDV, Software Defined Vehicles. The necessity to continue to push software updates out to the vehicle is ever growing. So managing that OTA feature activation is an area of new monetization capability. So first it was a cost save, right? I can do updates to the vehicle without bringing them back to a dealer or getting a warranty claim. Now we're looking at feature on demand capabilities where folks can pay for new features coming into the vehicle. So that's something that continues to grow. And then there's some things that are newer that are still sort of evolving and getting explored. So there's everything from B2B data being used for all kinds of things for urban planning, for smart cities and the like. There are things like all sorts of V to X communication capabilities. particularly in the grid space as we move into a more EV prevalent world. So management of smart grids and energy back and forth to the grid, communication that way. So there are, like I said, established methodologies for monetization. There are revenue models that are becoming more prevalent, and there are still things that we're exploring and kind of getting out on the frontier with that. We're seeing new opportunities as the market changes.
Yeah, and just to comment on two areas, your last one, V2X, as we figured out how to keep the car connected, now the car can do more and talk to more things. So we're seeing a lot more of that, and I agree with you there. And the other one is OTA. We highlight in our white paper about new ways of using or delivering OTA, one of which is using broadcast television signals through something called ATSC 3.0. There's another acronym for you. Advanced Television Systems Committee is what it stands for. And they basically compress the TV signal so that it allows IP data to go from the TV tower to a moving vehicle. And with a radius of 50 to 80 square miles per tower, you can reach a lot of cars on each tower for a lot less cost than typical wireless. And the reason is because it's one file going to many at the same time instead of a one-to-one connection like wireless. So it's a great strategy for OEMs to think about how can I add what's called data casting or broadcasting using data to my mix from wireless, Wi-Fi, and perhaps data casting and even satellite. So there's lots of different ways to get the data to and from the car. One of the best ways that is emerging as an inexpensive way to get it to the car is data casting. So let me turn to the other ecosystem providers that are involved and we read about all the time in automotive and all the partnerships that are being created. So there's the big tech players, right? There's Amazon and Google and Apple, all trying to vie for some participation in the car ecosystem. And there's a lot of other ecosystem partners, but I want to turn my attention to Dan, get him in the conversation here. So Dan, you've had a lot of experience dealing with companies like Google, with companies like Apple, with other third-party companies that are also trying to get into the car. Um, where do we stand on some of that wrestling that's going on, right? I heard about GM making agreements about what it's going to do and not do, and various automakers at times trying to do its own operating system. Where do we stand relative to that?
Well, I think that's a always changing battlefield. Maybe that's not the right term to use, but you've got the big tech players who do want to find a way into the automobile, and they've all taken different approaches on how to get there. And many of them have taken more than one approach. So, for example, Google not only provides things like Android Auto from your smartphone that gets mirrored in the head unit, but they also have Google built-in that provides more of an Android experience that smartphone users are comfortable with, and that's built into the car. But they've also gone lower than that. They've got the operating systems with AOSP and AAOS, four-letter acronyms this time, Chip, that provide a foundation upon which other services can be built. So there is a lot of activity from those big players. They're looking at automotive as sort of a contained space where there are limited numbers of other distractions that can influence what people do in the car. Certainly when you're driving, you're limited by keeping the car moving where it's supposed to go in the lane and not getting into accidents. As ADAS and assisted drive becomes more common, you're starting to see more of the services that previously were only allowed for backseat passengers or maybe a front seat passenger, that those now are becoming available to drivers when they're driving or for all of those occupants when they're sitting in park, whether that's in a charging station or at school for a pickup after a long day of school for the kids, but a variety of different use cases like that. So you've got typically there's a few categories of experiences that automakers have built in, whether it's infotainment, earliest forms of infotainment were just the radio, AM and FM. Sirius XM then came on the scene about 30 years ago as well, 25 to 30 years ago. And now there's applications that are built into the car, whether those are things you can listen to from a variety of app providers, IM Media Lab, Spotify, TuneIn, Pandora, you name it. There's an audio application out there. There's also interactive types of infotainment, like Stingray has karaoke, that's especially popular in Asia, and it's making its way to America in a few vehicles here. And then there's the ability to navigate to a different place. Back in the old days, I remember having all the paper maps and the AAA triptychs and getting verbal directions from someone at the gas station who would tell you how to get to the place you're trying to get to. Now all that's been replaced with smartphones that can project onto the screen or built-in navigation systems there. Those are the kind of experiences that these big tech companies are trying to become the primary delivery mechanism for. We're providing those services. And then you have the automakers that are trying to maintain control of what their customers experience. And at the end of the day, the tech companies and the automakers need to provide experiences and capability that customers want, that solves a need that they have, that makes their life better. And it's unclear who's going to eventually win. And by the time somebody wins, there'll be a new battle that starts on something else. So it's a really fun space to be in. It's always changing. And I expect the next 5 to 10 years will continue to show a lot of innovation and improvement. With AI, that accelerates the pace of being able to make changes, and automakers now are realizing they need to future-proof their cars by putting in excess capacity and capability that hasn't been realized yet, because a few years from now it will, and with over-the-air updates and then AI built into the car, you're going to be able to add new capability to keep the car fresh for a lot longer and keep that ownership, sort of pride of ownership high for a much longer period of time.
Yeah, when back when you and I worked for the same automaker, navigation systems were an option, and they were $2,500 or more. I used to think that was incredibly high, and now hardly anyone sells a navigation system kind of for that, right?
That's
The
right.
customer has it in the palm of their hand. So automakers have to react to that world, right? They had to react to iOS and Apple and Android because that's what people carry around. Any other comments on kind of the tension between the big tech companies and the auto companies relative to connected vehicles?
Well, this is less a comment on that tension, but just to kind of build on some of the things Dan talked about, that making the experience valuable for the folks in the vehicle, and I won't just say the driver because it could be anybody in the vehicle. Um, the advances in technology have made another monetization case available that I haven't mentioned, which is in the sort of advertising and in-vehicle commerce space. Folks don't think they necessarily think of targeted advertising within a vehicle, but you get advertised to in a vehicle all the time, right? You see billboards through the window, you get ads on the radio, et cetera. But with the personalization and customization, communication, and data available now, it can become more targeted and could become more useful for the folks in the car, right? So this is, hey, you are looking for lunch right now. Let me give you a discount at a place that you like to go for lunch, or it's time to fuel up. Here's a discount on your fuel. Really, uh, you know, well-placed advertising that meets the need of the customer. Or you've got a check engine light on in your vehicle. Here's some place nearby that you can get it serviced. We'll get you on the schedule. We'll give you a coupon for the service, et cetera. Things that really help the customers in the vehicle. And building in the commerce capability to be able to complete those transactions from within the vehicle is another area that's being explored right now. So those are, new spaces you can move into that both benefit the folks in the vehicle and can help generate revenues for those outside in the ecosystem.
Yeah. And I see actually a lot of companies thinking about, how do I help the customer while they're sitting still waiting to charge their vehicle, right? These are new ideas we didn't really think about before. A lot of it was location-based stuff because of vehicle moving around, what we could serve them up. But this is really different now because people are sitting in their car for 30 minutes and you can deliver different things. Um, let's move a little bit to kind of some of the issues that auto companies wrestle with, right, as they try to do this work. They have connected vehicles, they're IoT focused, they're trying to add AI to personalize this experience, as Chip was saying. What are kind of some of the challenges and issues they run into to do this actually, right? It's great to talk about it, but then you have to do it. Constantine, why don't I start with you? You have, again, some experience with lots of different companies trying to deploy all these kinds of solutions. How do they run into issues and how do they overcome those issues? What are the type of issues they run into as they try to work together with you, perhaps, to build these solutions out and do this work?
It's a great question, actually, because from my perspective, the main problem is not the technology itself. It's more about scaling this technology over the 100,000 or millions of vehicles. So, first of all, it's data integration. Connected vehicles generates a huge amount of data. I mean, like any sensor, battery sensor, mirror sensor, light sensor, bumper sensor, any other connected devices, all they generate data, and we create value from this data. So first challenge is to aggregate this data in a proper way and make it useful to create value for a customer. As well, besides this, we have a security problem. I mean, like not a problem, but a question. I mean, cybersecurity, because data leak, well, each of you should be aware how painful it could be, especially if you're a leader on the market, a huge company. You should do your best not to allow yourself any security data on confidential data leak. So automakers invest heavily in this area. The other problem, actually, I also think that each of you have faced with this. It's valuable features. I mean, not all of the features that we have in our vehicles are really useful. Some of them are dumb, some of them have bad user experience or UI. So to avoid such kind of features and to focus on more valuable is also a big challenge. Uh, let's say what else? Legacy. We call it legacy, but again, automakers. These are the companies they have been on the market like a pioneer in software implementation. So all of them have software for the last 3 decades or something, and part of this software is outdated. I mean, it costs a lot to update it, it costs a lot to implement new functionality, to avoid any escalation and even change. So the challenge is how to implement AI if you spend a lot of money and time and energy to support existing infrastructure. So this is also the question that we see a big potential of improvement, actually. Uh, from the other standpoint, I also would like to mention that, again, to create a prototype is simple, yeah? If you need to operate a fleet, I mean, like, let's say 50,000 vehicles fleet or 500,000 vehicles fleet, it's absolutely different kind of task, not to create a prototype, but ramp out a real productive products that could support big amount of data, big amount of customers, and create value for them. So in the end, overall, it seems that industry, like 10 years ago, each vehicle was 98, 99% just hardware, yeah? Right now, we see the cooperation between manufacturing, software development, data science, and AI. So I do believe that the next decade advantage would have that companies that will more focused on integrating data science and AI technologies, not just produce hardware for their customers.
Yeah. Thank you, Constantine. We have a good question or a few good questions from the audience, so we'll pause for a moment to address those. John Bucci, hey John, welcome, is asking, stating the companies winning right now are the ones that control their software stack end to end and treat the vehicle as a platform. So back to that first comment at the beginning, right? Car as phone, basically. Not just a product. Love to hear maybe Chip in how he might be looking to help an OEM achieve this goal. So how do you pull all this together and treat the whole thing like a platform and optimize it based on that? It's a good question. Chip, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. No, I think it's a great question, and it really is, a challenge for OEMs, right? So a lot of the technologies involved in the ecosystem aren't components that the OEMs are particularly well placed to deliver on their own. Uh, on the flip side, this is a model that's not foreign to OEMs in a general sense, right? So working through a supplier network to build a final product has been the MO for automakers for decades, right? So as different players in the ecosystem get established with delivering components, the OEM has to again step into that uh, final platform ownership, sort of a role where they do the ecosystem design and the integration and the delivery of it, but rely on technology partners to deliver capabilities and components that create the customer experience and the ecosystem and the platform that they want for their vehicles. And that is something that has required, an expertise development within the automotive space, right? So you've got to have a certain level of, technology facility and capability to be able to architect that ecosystem in a way that benefits everybody, but puts the OEM front and center as the platform owner, right, with the support of all these tier one providers. And I think they're all in one way or another trying to move in that direction. There's been a cycle between OEMs trying to do everything on their own and then outsourcing everything to partners. And there will still be a little bit of in and out as they figure out which capabilities and components are core and should be delivered specifically by the OEM. But I expect partners and suppliers and tier ones to have a significant role. And it's the OEMs that put together the right partner network that are really going to be successful here.
Yeah, let me just comment. I think you're spot on. And for me, the big change is automakers trying to think about becoming service companies. They're product companies. That's what they are culturally. And we're asking them to be service companies as soon as they start doing connected vehicle services. And that's really hard. There's all kinds of moving pieces. They have to rely on partners to deliver. In the product side, of course, they rely on vendors and suppliers that are partners to deliver just-in-time parts, et cetera. So I think the corollaries are there, but they're not quite always thinking about it as being a service company. I'm wondering, Dan, I'll go to you because as somebody who worked for an OEM, leading the service side of their connected vehicle business, what kind of issues did you run into about that cultural distinction between becoming a, service company when you're really starting out as a product company?
Well, in most OEMs, especially the legacy OEMs, the connected service group tended to be more like an IoT or tech company embedded within a traditional automotive manufacturer, and the development cycles were quite different. So just as a starting point, there's a cultural clash within most automakers, or many are past that now, but that was a major hurdle to overcome, where the connected technology needs to be the latest and greatest. It needs to be new and fresh. It needs to solve meaningful issues for a vehicle owner. There are some of those capabilities that are absolutely only able to be delivered by integrating directly with the car, like doing a remote start from your cell phone. The phone by itself can't deliver that. It needs to have the car as a willing partner in that service. But the infotainment type space, the car has to keep up with the phone. The phone is always improving. It's on a short life cycle, even though they do spend a long time in the background operating more like an auto company than a lot of people realize. And they have long cycle times or longer cycle times than expected. But the automakers culturally need to realize that it's not a launch and leave. And when you launch a connected service platform in 2018 or 2026 or 2030, you have to build in the capability for that to improve over the life of a free trial, over the life of a paid subscription, over the life of the car. Because if you don't, a customer is just going to gravitate back to what's in their hand. And it's going to be easier and easier to do things from your smartphone as the car takes on more and more of the driving, and you can get to an hands off and eyes off driving scenario. Then it's going to be a fight for eyeballs and attention within the vehicle. So a lot of automakers are getting that. The culture's changing. There's shortening their development cycles. They are building in the future-proof capability in the car. They are looking for partners who can deliver lightweight applications, capabilities that are easy to update, and then keeping their ear to the ground and listening to their customers and getting feedback, not just from how the vehicle gets used and the vehicle tells automakers what's happening. They're getting this data, but they're also listening to what customers are saying on a lot of social networks and market research types of surveys, and they're gathering insight on what they need to do to be more relevant and all of this is made possible now because of connectivity. If vehicles didn't have this connected capability, we would be where we were 3 decades ago with the only upgrades you can make to your car is to put hardware in it. Go to a dealer, buy it yourself, put it on yourself. Now with the power of software and the cloud and remote connectivity, you can really do a lot more with the car and keep it always improving than you ever could in the past.
Yeah, I like to, that's great. Thank you, Dan. I'd like to kind of think also about the impact on the consumer, the driver. But as a good segue to that, let's go to another question from our friend Trevor. Trevor Kerwin, thanks for your question or your statement, comment. In-car payments have been challenging, but tied payments marketing around the charging experience led by retailers, not OEMs, will have some attraction. So Trevor, believe it or not, 10 years ago when I worked with IBM, I was working with GM on e-commerce in the car, long time ago, and still challenging. Recently, we talked to a large enterprise fleet called Element. They have 1.5 million cars under management. They recently bought a company called Car IQ, which is all around vehicle payments, and they're creating something called Element Pay. So here's a large enterprise fleet that's pushing on e-commerce, right, relative to the vehicle. Despite whatever the OEMs do, they're trying to keep up and drive the future. So there's a good example of an area, a feature set that consumers are interested in, right? Consumers are looking for. Even though we tried to do it a few years ago, it's still important. It's still relevant. Their smartphone can do a lot. They want to not have a black hole of features when they get in their car. They want it to actually complement that. So, anybody have any comments in our panel about the consumer experience, the types of features that you see? Chip, you mentioned feature on demand, for example, as a new thing that we're trying to deliver now, maybe a little more successfully than the first couple of iterations from some OEMs. Any other ideas around consumer experience in particular that AI can facilitate within this connected vehicle world? That's to anybody on the panel.
We've been currently experimenting with smart homes and vehicles connecting to that. Most recently, creating a garage door opener using geofencing. So that's a lot of the space we're looking at. So smart homes is an area that we're looking at using AI and some other tooling.
Yeah, Hyundai has, I think, a smart home offering that they're deploying. That was announced a year ago or so. A lot of other companies are trying to think about how to do that. So there's a good example, right? Integrate your car in your life. Any other comments from our panel? Dan, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just the AI is making it possible for a lot of app developers, in-vehicle experience companies to be able to do things much faster than what they could do before, and to scale up and deliver services to a very large automotive audience in record times versus what was available before. So there is a lot that's going on in customer experience. A lot of it, again, it ties back to what are the main use cases in the car. There's infotainment, there's navigation, there's integrating with other services, whether they're city or home. And the connectivity is the pipeline that enables that. But AI is one of those engines that allows a garage band to create a really compelling feature and deliver that at scale without needing the enormous investment and time and resources that would have been needed in the past. So I'm expecting there to be a lot more innovation in this space, and automakers will have to deal with how they manage their platforms. Do they make it an open source where everyone can innovate, or do they keep it controlled and somewhat closed off so that they have more control over that customer experience in the car? And that's yet to really be determined how that'll all sort out. The customer at the end is going to be the one that decides what is the best solution, because they'll decide based on who they buy products from and who they stay loyal to.
Yep, that's right.
I would
Okay.
just say, sorry, George, just a couple other thoughts on AI and where they'd be applicable to some of the things we've talked about, right? So, first, in some of the spaces that already existed and matured to some extent, AI is positioned to help those go to the next level. And you just think of its capability in analytics. So, if you look at things like UBI and fleet management, using AI tools to better analyze patterns could be really useful in understanding positive and negative patterns, right? Whether that be in individual driving for their risk of being in an accident, or in a fleet management system to understand everything from driver behaviors to routing patterns and traffic, really has the potential to take those capabilities to the next level. And the more the more growing areas, the ones that are being explored and being developed at this point, predictive maintenance is an example. So I mentioned earlier that there have been mixed results from folks trying to figure out predictive maintenance, but the application of AI to large data sets has a potential for making predictive maintenance much more effective particularly in fleet and commercial space, to understand what types of maintenance best maximize vehicle uptime, as well as how to, cost effectively manage your fleet in a way that keeps them operational. So I think those are a couple of really good applications for AI to take, some services to the next level.
No, that's a great point. And of course, we at AutoMobility Advisors work with a company that uses AI to automate service scheduling for customers, right? Working with car dealers directly. Really interesting area, super value to the customer, right? You get a text with three choices of times to go book your appointment. You say yes, and it automatically happens. You don't have to call anybody. They don't have to call you. And it's all generated off your telematics data. When your check engine light comes on, the car's smart enough to essentially encourage you to make an appointment and give you choices.
Yeah, and that's a
Really,
great example of solving a problem that exists,
yeah,
that many people had thrown their hands up because they couldn't figure out how to make it work. But now you're seeing a lot of innovation. We were at NADA show a month ago, and a very large portion of the show floor was devoted to improving the service experience. Customers don't like it when things go bad and go wrong on their cars. So how can you make that experience better? And when there are these needs that are identified in the market, and then companies set out to solve those kinds of problems and make that customer experience better, everybody wins.
yeah, no, and AI was everywhere at NADA, as you saw. Um, and in the past, I think a lot of AI was deployed around things like customer support, call centers, and things like that. Now it's getting to be much closer to the customer at the sharp end. I talked to a company called Spiffy, some of you may know, which is a mobile service company, and they use AI to automate, whether the customer has a repair that can be done in their driveway, which they can come and do for them, or they need to go to the dealer, right? They need to separate those things out. Some things have to happen in the fixed ops area, but they can use these kind of tools to help the customer essentially get repair done right in their driveway, which is pretty awesome.
Yep.
Okay.
George,
Go ahead.
sorry, let me step in. We started to brainstorming a lot of things, just a couple of more ideas. So if we speak about like the driver, so we could uh, make that driver experience better. I've just checked lately, like Instagram, and there was a nice feature. I don't remember for whom exactly, for instance, from Mercedes, and it adjusts your the songs or the playlist based on the way how you drive. So you're starting to hear AC/DC when you're pulling the car over, but when you're calm, there is another thing. So there is a lot of things about like mood detection, about adjusting your adjusting everything for the driver. But at the same time, there is a lot of uh, let's say it's an ecosystem. The car is just an a data source, but at the same time, everything that is about the traffic, everything that is about like energy optimization. For instance, additional things here may come about. Let's think about insurance providers. So it's vital for insurance providers. Well, there is a lot of data protection things there, but still, if insurance providers knows who one is selling insurance for, and based on the way how the person drives, really, there is a lot of opportunities there. So there is still a lot of industries across the ecosystem near the car that could benefit from that, not
Yeah,
only
I agreed. And
being in the car.
you mentioned earlier, and again on kind of the regulations.
Yeah.
A lot of automakers wrestle with, of course, connected vehicles and the privacy issue, not necessarily the security issue, but the privacy issue, individuals, PII, et cetera. There's lots of rules, of course, GDPR, EU Data Act now in force, California's rules, dealing with all that. I'm just wondering, maybe wondering aloud here, if AI is helping or hurting that mission? Is AI somehow helping us organize how to be more compliant and protect people more, or some other way? Any experience, any feedback on privacy generally within connected and AI in particular?
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, the landscape differs a bit compared, in the United States and within the European Union. In the European Union, it's a bit more regulated by GDPR that you mentioned, by cybersecurity and OT updates, laws, and all of that stuff. So, you at least could play within with having the same rules within the European Union. In the United States, it differs a bit. So, for instance, we in terms of safety, it's fully regulated by National Highway Administration, and it's clear. Then we have data privacy. So it differs from state to state, and within the United States there is now like specific rules. It differs from real estate to state, and if we speak about the, let's say, standard case, when you have the business, you're operating in Florida, it's easy, you just act under the law of Florida. But with the car, it's another story. You may move from Florida to South Carolina to North Carolina, across the whole country. And while you're moving, you are going to another jurisdiction. And yeah, it's the question of the law, but at the same time, it's the question of it's technical question. You have to solve it somehow, because if the car is sending the data to the cloud, and if it's sending it, for instance, in California, we're operating by the Californian Act. So how does it solve in the real world nowadays, and where is the complexity? It's not on the law because level. You could understand how to operate with the data in different cases, but it's solved really in the cloud, for instance. What kind of data you may use after getting the data from the which state? What kind of the data you are as OEM could distribute later to your vendors or whatever? So it actually gives another level of complexity, but on the technical level rather than on the law level. So it's the main idea here behind the legislation procedures.
All right. Thank you,
Yeah.
Vadim.
I think that's a great point, Vadim. And the technical challenge part of it is, we shouldn't undersell that, right? So the not only are there different types of legislations in different locales, but it's changing and it's going to continue
Yeah.
changing over the life cycle of these vehicles. So having a platform built with the flexibility and capability to adapt as that legislation changes and as different controls are put in place is critical. So having, partners like our friends here at Devox who can come in and build that sort of a flexible platform to manage your data in a way that can evolve as the legislative environment evolves is critical.
Yep. Yep.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a tie-in too from what Vadim said and what John Bucci has also asked on the chat. And it all ties into delivering a better user experience. If an automaker tier one and other partners are able to make experiences that the customer values using the data that the customer has, in part generated, then the customer is going to be fine with their data being used in those use cases. When the data becomes punitive to the customer, or if their data isn't protected and it gets stolen, that's when you start to lose trust. So you need to be able to deliver, a good user experience, use the data for positive things, and make sure that whatever you do works and doesn't work 90% of the time or 80% of the time or even 95% of the time. Automakers know that you need to deliver a near perfect car that continues to improve in order to get customers to willing to deliver monetization through subscriptions for different programs or buy new services. It's no different than the rest of customers' life. They don't want something that's a hassle and they don't want someone to misuse their personal information.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And for me, it's always down to value the customer generates and gets from it. If they get value, then they're willing to share and be open and work with you. And if they don't get value, they are demanding, et cetera, right? And all kinds of models are changing, subscription models are changing, et cetera, because the rest of the world changes, even if automotive doesn't, and automotive has to keep up with those changes. So really good discussion. I think we're down to our last few seconds. So I want to thank everybody for joining. A lot of good automotive friends here joining today. Really appreciate that. I will send a recording to everybody that registered. It will also be posted on our YouTube channel, so you can share it with your colleagues. And I really appreciate everybody attending today. Thank you for your time and have a great rest of your week. Good luck.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Great talking.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Take care, guys.